We're going to get right to this right now. Dan Ives joins us from Wedbush here, all over the media, of course, as we go into the Mag 8 frenzy. Warren Buffett, he's part of the Mag 8 right now. 65 buys on Nvidia, 8 holds, no sells. Now, you don't follow Nvidia. You've got a thug at Wedbush that follows it, right?
Yeah, so our view in Nvidia, we have a $138 price target. Bull case is $175.
Bernstein went to $150 this morning.
And I think this is just a start. I mean, look, I think this, by the end of the day, or even in the next 24 hours, this is a stock that should be in the green based on everything we saw from Godfather of AI, Jensen Nvidia.
Paul, get one more in here.
I will. So Dan, give us a sense. What did you hear from Nvidia last night? They beat numbers. Maybe the guidance wasn't where the street was expecting, but what did you really take away from Nvidia last night?
So 3 things. One, demand. Because the question is there double ordering? What is enterprise demand? Demand's actually accelerating. And there's no better perch in terms of everything we're seeing from AI than what Jensen sees. 2, Blackwell, all the fears, right? The worries. Is that getting delayed? They essentially put those fears to rest. And that was so important.
Okay.
You know I'm the only one that does math with you, not all this fancy Dan Ives talk. You take the 10 billion share buyback of Apple, they've been doing it for years, divided by free cash flow. You take a 50 billion statistic divided by Nvidia's free cash flow. To me, it was a ginormous announcement. Everybody's saying it's not a big deal. Was a share buyback a big deal?
It's a monster deal. And also, this also goes to a company you go back 6 months ago, out year by 25, 26. People thought $2 in earnings. Now it's going to be $5 to $6.
Extended time here this morning with Dan Ives. We welcome you all around the world on YouTube, on Android Auto, Apple CarPlay as well. Okay. I go to Apple, I go to the famed aggregation of Tom Secunda in the Bloomberg News, and I'm just going to read these, Paul, quickly. Mashable. Apple Music playlist now transferable to YouTube Music. University of Wisconsin denied new trial as they go after somebody. Apple orders 10% more iPhones than last year. Apple iPhone 17 rumored to arrive at the Sweeney house before September 15th. And on the last headline, Dan Ives on Bloomberg right now. I mean, here's the news out of Tokyo. Shock. There's more iPhone orders. How do you translate that?
I mean, this is the start of an AI-driven super cycle with iPhone 16. I think it's going to be a historical period. Look, we've talked about a lot on the show. 300 million of 1.5 billion iPhones, including Sweeney, haven't upgraded in 4+ years. AI, 25% of the world is going to access AI through an Apple device. The consumer revolution all starts.
I'm going to push against you. Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney don't give a damn about AI. We just want an iPhone to know where our kids are. What's the big deal about AI if Paul Sweeney's not going to use it?
So that's today. If you look at there's going to be hundreds of apps built on Apple Intelligence that are going to be AI driven. As well as this open AI, it's essentially going to be a personal assistant that really, from a data perspective, understands Paul Sweeney, understands Keene, understands your habits. This is going to change. This is how most consumers are now going to interact with AI.
Right. China. What's the latest on China? My concern, always in the back of my mind, is that the average Chinese consumer is saying, I'm just not buying American. Is that an issue for Apple in terms of market share?
I mean, as someone that spends time in the region, the average Chinese consumer wants the best product in the world, which is an Apple device. So I'm not saying that there aren't some geopolitical headwinds. We're actually seeing more tailwinds out of China, especially with iPhone 16. You have 100 million iPhones that basically have an upgrade in 4 years. So I think any headwinds there have started now become tailwinds. That's what I cook. 90% CEO, 10% politician.
Right. Yeah, it's smart. How about India? I was just talking about this with somebody at the club last night, Tom. At the bar, we were talking iPhones in India. How that came about, I have no idea.
John Tucker, were you at the club last night?
There's no club that would take me. Nor would I want to be in that club.
Or were you at the watch party for Nvidia?
Oh,
yes, exactly.
Weisenthal was that sad or whatever?
Yep, exactly.
I thought Sweeney was going to be at that watch party.
I did too. I know. He's day trading off his couch at the cottage. I can only say my club last night, I was at Club Do the Dishes. Continue, Mr. Sweeney.
India. What's the opportunity there for Apple in India? Don't they have to have a lower price phone in that market?
Yeah, but in India, you've actually had a rising middle class. And I think if you look, that's always been a tough market for Apple. 3% iPhones, we think, call it by the next 2 years, it's going to be 10 to 12% overall iPhones. India is actually going to be robust for Apple, especially on different price points.
How many iPhones are purchased, a wise one, on a plan from a phone company, and not where somebody spends $800 or $1,000 on the toy?
I mean,
it's a huge number.
I mean,
right?
it's a huge number, and if you look at the carrier discounts, that's going to come. And this is the big thing.
Do you have information on them you'd like to break on Bloomberg surveillance this morning?
Look, everything we're seeing, we think it's going to essentially be unprecedented types of promotion from especially U.S. carriers.
Verizon, AT&T,
Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, just because this is the time. In other words, when you think about 5G, when that came out, and now essentially AI, this is really going to be the opportunity in terms of carrier discounts. And what really starts, you talk about maturity on a smartphone cycle, this is now that consumer AI revolution that actually will go through Cupertino. And we think that's how we have a $4 trillion market cap as we go into early next year.
Do you have a sum of the parts on Apple you can update for us?
Yeah, so we have
now?
1.7 trillion is what I view as the services value. And when you sort of sum of the parts, that's something where you got about 100 billion of rev growing mid-teens, free cash flow margins are double the hardware business. You combine it, it's over 4 trillion. I think bull case is ultimately over 300.
Microsoft, I know you've been very bullish on Microsoft. What's the thought these days?
You look at Nvidia's call last night, you also buy Microsoft because Nadella and Redmond are leading that on the software side. You look at OpenAI, they're really dominating in that Mount Rushmore. That's where Nadella is along with Jensen.
Does Blackwell compete with Azure? Or do they cohabitate?
They're complementary. And think about Blackwell.
I don't understand that. Explain that.
So essentially, Blackwell is almost the architecture, the foundation of a house. Microsoft is the actual house. The actual rooms will be different software players, ServiceNow, called Salesforce and others. What protects the house? Cybersecurity, names like Palo Alto and others. Look, I continue to think, NVIDIA today, it's LeBron in high school. That's essentially where they are. LeBron in high school. NVIDIA, that's where they are.
So I guess when we think about this AI spending here, the numbers are just almost numbing. They're so big. How much of the AI capital spending is it incremental versus just taken away from other tech budgets like IT or something like that?
So I'd say about 800 billion of the trillion is incremental. So there's 200 billion that, of course, there's a cannibalization impact and there'll be losers on that. But it really is incremental. And it just speaks to strong will get stronger in tech. And then you can talk about regulatory. Regulatory is in a minivan going 40 miles an hour in the right lane. And the technology is in a Ferrari, Keene the Ferrari, left lane going 100 miles an hour.
What is the free cash flow growth of the Mag 7? When you aggregate them together, there's a secret Excel spreadsheet in the basement of the Ives house.
Free cash flow growth of Mag 7 is, I'd say, upper teens into potentially 20%.
Really? You're going to give me a 2-0 on it?
I think it could start to now get that high as we go into next 2 or 3. And that's why, look, I get it. The Bears continue to, they sit there with their spreadsheets, DCF being negative on tech.
But I'm going to stop there. This is too important. You're going to DCF. I asked this of Paul yesterday. How do you do a terminal value on these juggernauts? This is not CFA 101.
But you have to ultimately trajectory out what the CapEx looks like, what's the incremental dollars, and what that ultimately means to the long term.
How far out does Dan Ives go?
You basically have to go out 6, 8, 10 years to actually do a trajectory. Like when you look at Microsoft, the way that you get 4.5, 5 trillion, okay, you have to basically say how much a percentage of CapEx they're going to get, what the monetization, what does the free cash flow incrementally look like, and that's where all these stories change. But then there's other names like a Palantir, the Messi of AI. It wasn't even on the radar. Now
they're LeBron and Messi into the same.
They're a core AI play.
Hey, Dan, one of the key attributes of your research is that you travel the globe. You see people all over the place. What's your next trip?
So we'll be going to Asia on Monday, be there for 2 weeks. And look, to me, that's where, as we've talked, that's where we get an edge, because I think a lot of investors, how they've missed AI revolution, they try to find it on the Metro North, Jersey Transit, on the 10th floor of their office building in New York or San Fran. You got to travel to see it. And I think that's...
So what do you see when you go to Korea?
We see the suppliers. We see the component players. I also think by seeing global investors, you get a very good sense in terms of where things are. And I think it just gives you a little more perspective.
Final. Can you convince John Tucker to upgrade this time around?
No, I think
the flip phone is
look.
doing
I think
just fine
Tucker, after going to the Nvidia watch party last night, that he might now potentially upgrade to an iPhone. His next iPhone.
It occurs to me, Blackwell. Where have I heard that name? Remember Mr. Blackwell, the guy who did the best and worst dressed list?
Oh yeah.
Where would Dan come in on that list?
Another
I think Keene would be at the top.
Yeah.
Keene would be at the top, and I'd be in maybe like the other category.
And
Mr.
safe
Blackwell
travels, hugely valuable. We'll of course
Thank
feature Mr. Ives, Mr. Munster together today on Bloomberg Surveillance. That's the way that we roll.